Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Just a Tip with Dr. Vic. My name is Dr. Victoria Hartman, and I'm the executive director of the Erotic Heritage Museum right here in Vegas. So, um, beyond the very weird weather that we've had here, I thought, well, maybe it would be cool to explore some other weird ideas as it pertains to sex and sexuality. Or maybe not that weird if you think about where we're headed in the future with respect to robotics, technology, and so forth. And it got me thinking about we're putting in a bunch of new exhibits right now at the museum. We've got the Garden of Earthly Delights. We're upgrading our Sex and Space exhibit with, well, an AI, a sex robot, and she talks to you. Now, we acquired her. Her name is Emma, and you can see her right up here. Okay. Um, she was acquired by the museum right before the pandemic began. And well, all of our exhibits sort of were put on hold because of the pandemic and the loss of guests, to help fund our exhibits. But now that we are open and doing business, it's time we actually get her put out there in the Sex and Space exhibit. And so I thought maybe today I would talk about sex and robots. Now, granted, there's not a lot of information out there about how technology is going to affect us sexually and so forth because we haven't gotten there yet. And sex robots aren't in most homes, right? Or any kind of robotics other than, say, maybe, our little vacuum cleaners and, um, you know, our AIs that run our home, and our air conditioners and so forth. But we don't really have robot companions yet. So we don't necessarily have any research that addresses the active and ongoing use of robotics in human intimacy and sexuality. But we do have a little bit of research out there on how people might feel if their partner did have an AI robot or an intimacy robot. So, a colleague of mine by the name of Justin Laymiller, he looked at a study that was published just last year in 2020 that was titled Friends, Lovers, or Nothing. Men and Women Differ in Their Perceptions of Sex Robots and Platonic Love Robots. And it was published in the Frontiers in Psychology. Okay. So they looked at how um, there are 277 adults. Let's see. The average age was 27, so pretty young. 90% of whom were heterosexual. So it's a pretty limited group of people. But they wanted to find out what their attitudes were towards sex robots. Okay. They created this experimental idea that they were asked about a sex robot that looks and feels just like humans, and another one that was a platonic love robot with no physical body that is capable of providing meaningful, romantic, and friendly relations to a human. Okay. Well, they asked about how would you feel if your partner had one or the other. In general, the participants of the study thought that sounded pretty realistic, which in and of itself is kind of amazing that, as especially amongst younger generations, the idea of having a robot, it sounds realistic. I don't know that we could have said that. We would maybe hoped that would have happened, or that might be possible 20, 30 years ago. But now people are actually saying, yeah, that sounds pretty realistic. That's probably going to happen. Um, uh, so it says here, while there was quite a bit of variability in people's feelings, attitudes towards both robots were negative overall. So people generally had a negative sense or negative feelings towards, any kind of robot. Men reported more positive attitudes towards robots than women did, but this was mainly true for the sex robot. When looking at the platonic love robot, men's and women's attitudes were fairly similar. All right. And regardless of the robot type, men tended to, they expected to feel less jealous if their partner got one compared to women. But women also reported higher feelings of jealousy about a sex robot compared to a love robot. Now, that is interesting because when we look at especially gendered studies that look at how people feel about love and sex, a lot of the studies show that men generally feel more sexual jealousy and women show more love jealousy. All right. So, and that's directly related to either reproduction or the access to resources. But in this, with the robot, it was flipped on its head. Women reported that they would be more jealous about the sex robot than the love robot. That I think is a really interesting point and probably deserves being looked at more deeply as to why that switch happened when it comes to an artificial, like an AI robot. Let's see. Lastly, when thinking about how your partner would respond if you owned a sex robot, men expected similar levels of dislike from their partner for both types of robots, whereas women anticipated more partner dislike if they used a sex robot than a love robot. Now, this is a very, very limited study because it's based on a hypothetical that actually hasn't happened yet. This is just what people think they might react to, right? Um, Now, they didn't ask how would you feel about using a robot with a partner. So that's something that deserves further study. And let's see. When robots are framed as a substitute or replacement for a real life partner, that may evoke more negative attitudes and jealousy, right? This was looking at jealousy. But is it a robot? Does it make it possible for partners to interact differently with each other or add novelty? Well, we don't know. We haven't gotten there yet. So there's a lot of different schools of thought or directions that any kind of further research can go. Um, so, and in the end, I mean, give it some thought. You give that some thought. Like, how would you feel if you had access to a love or a sex robot, or your partner did? Like, how would you feel about that? Well, luckily, um, oh, over here, we have Emma in the museum. She'll be put in the Sex and Space robot. I'm sorry, Sex and Space exhibit. Pretty soon, like I said, we're focusing on some other big exhibits that are getting completed right now. One is actually wasn't an exhibit we were expecting to bring back, but so many people expressed, you know, an interest in having the exhibit come back. We just took it down last March to replace it with the Garden of Earthly Delights. But people have been like, "Where's this exhibit? Where's this exhibit?" So we are actually going to build a rebirth of one of the exhibits. So that's been pretty exciting. But in amongst all of that, we're going to bring Emma out onto the museum floor, and maybe you can get a chance to ask yourself or have a conversation with your partner or your friends or whoever you come in the museum with. Now that you're actually interacting with Emma and she's responding to you, because she does respond, you can talk to her and she will respond. Her skin warm. She a little clip that I put up. Her head moves. She responds. So it's an opportunity to kind of explore this idea for yourself a little bit more. So the next time you come to the museum, probably she'll be out in another or two. So on the museum floor. So next time you come into town, come and say hi to Emma and see, kind of check in with yourself how you would feel about having a robot, even intimacy in your life. Food for thought, right? So with that, I think that's take care of our episode for today. Um, and, if you guys have thoughts about future episodes, please let me know. And in the meantime, cooler weather prevails here in Vegas right now. So if you do live here in Las Vegas, you're visiting us, enjoy that nice outside weather. And don't forget, we have all kinds of cool places you can go that are outside of the city, like Mount Charleston, the lake, of course, Lake Las Vegas also. So there's a lot of cool places to go when you're getting tired of being on the strip. Okay. Otherwise, have a really great week, and I will see you all next week. Okay.